Hello and welcome to my BCM216 pitch. My idea for a story for the final group project is based on the theme of anonymity. When I was coming up with my idea for this project, I thought it would be really interesting to focus on this theme because so much can be done with it. What inspired me was that I recently watched the film V for Vendetta, which began as a book written by Alan Moore published in 1982. It was also turned into a comic and graphic novel. The story depicts a dystopian, post-apocalyptic near future of the UK, preceded by a nuclear war in the 1980s that devastated the rest of the world. The political party in this near future are neo-fascist, white supremacist, homophobic, and exterminate whoever opposes them. The main character V wears a Guy Fawkes mask, which is where the theme of anonymity comes into play. He is an anarchist revolutionary character who was once a tortured prisoner in these camps. He creates an elaborate and theatrical revolutionist campaign to kill these government figures and bring down this fascist state. Throughout the book, comic, and the movie, you never see what V actually looks like, and we don't really know who he is. And I love this idea because I think it's intriguing and really keeps the audience guessing throughout, which will make for an interesting transmedia story. Another story that has inspired my concept is a real-life story of Behrouz Boochani, a Kurdish-Iranian refugee who lived on Australian-run Manus Island refugee camp from 2013 to 2017. Behrouz kept in contact with the outside world through his Twitter account when he was in this refugee camp and accumulated a huge following. This was his only way of talking with the outside world, and he spoke of the unlivable conditions and the mistreatments he and every other person inside that refugee camp faced for those 5 years. He wrote letters while he was locked up, which eventually ended up becoming his first book, No Friend But the Mountains, which was released when he was still detained. People have been following his story for years, and now he's a famous writer, journalist, and a professor. So through these two stories, I've attempted to kind of mesh them together and create my own. I have been inspired to create a fictional story where there is a main character, someone who is in hiding from the government because they are leaking sensitive information, like a whistleblower. The character used to be a government worker and hence had access to top government secrets. They knew the ins and outs of its corruption, and they know everything the government doesn't want the public knowing. This character has now run away from their city and have started leaking highly sensitive information to their public audience. This will inevitably spark outrage in both the government and its citizens and eventually will lead to an uproar of sorts, as more people start to realise how corrupt the world is that they live in. Also, just like in V for Vendetta, my character carries that theme of anonymity. We don't know what this character looks like or who he or she is. Throughout their weekly tweets and audio entries, the character gives hints as to where they're hiding and what they're up to, as well as leaking that sensitive information out to the world. Which brings me to my next part. So the character only communicates with their audience on Twitter and through weekly audio entries. No one knows where they are, but this person keeps giving out this important information about the government that citizens should rightfully be educated on. No one can find this person, but this person has gained a huge online following, just like Behrouz Boochani, who educated his audience on the disgusting living conditions in Manus Island. The other aspect I want to include in this story is the media and the government side of the story. So I'd like to include a journalist who follows the story really closely of this anonymous character and writes updated news articles on the police's search for this rebel. I think including both sides of the story enables the story world to build a lot stronger and provides multiple perspectives, which could be really interesting. Like we've talked about in the class and in lectures, stories need to have a distinct beginning, middle, and end. So for this story, the beginning will consist of the anonymous character creating their online platform and starting to reach out to its audience. The middle part is when the character gets a large following and the media and the police are starting to look for this character. The ending will ultimately result in the police finding the character and sentencing them to death or life imprisonment. So far, this is the brief outline of the story, but I'm also willing to alter the story I have. Now for the proof of concept. Like Walter Benjamin put it, the storyteller takes what he tells from experience, his own or that reported by others, and he in turn makes it the experience of those who are listening to his tale. I use this idea in my story as my storyteller, aka the main character, is telling their story from their lived experience, which makes the story all the more interesting for those listening. The subject outline states that the final project needs to take the form of multiple mediums, with the relationship between media and relate to content looked in class. The multiple mediums my story will need are Twitter, a website, audio entries posted on SoundCloud, which are all posted on the website, All these mediums interrelate and have an input in the story. As I said before, I would like to create a few news articles written by a journalist who is following the story and is updating the public on the search for this character. These news articles will either be published on a fake news website or a fake news Twitter account, which posts updates on the search for this rebel. I think this could be really interesting to add the different perspective of the story because, like Henry Jenkins says, most often transmedia stories are based not on individual characters or specific plots, but rather complex fictional worlds which can sustain multiple interrelated characters and their stories. The characters introduced here would be the journalists who write the news articles, and they talk about the detectives who are looking for our main character. Each of the mediums I have chosen are all very achievable, as I know my fellow students are capable of helping me create fake Twitter accounts and creating websites for the project. All the mediums can be adapted to be online, so the collaborative aspect can easily be achieved and we can collectively work on the project online, together from the comfort of our homes. The audio entries will be uploaded on SoundCloud so we can all have access to it, and they'll be embedded on the Anonymous Characters website where the public can listen to it. And again, we can all gain access to the WordPress site if we need to tweak things or add things. The roles that we need are a website maker, a Twitter account creator, and content poster for both the Anonymous Character and the News Corporation, a recorder and editor of audio entries, and the writer of the news articles, who can also help with the News Corporation's Twitter account. Obviously, I'd like to encourage everyone to work collaboratively as well and all brainstorm ideas together, but I think it's also achievable to have an allocated medium for each person who they focus mainly on. With the skills we need are website creation with WordPress, and I know that each student does actually have a WordPress account, so that will be okay. Writing skills, audio recording and editing, this can easily be done on a phone if we don't have access to a good audio recorder. I'll also be able to add effects through Adobe Audition, and creativity, helping guide the story with me. I'm competent with all these skills, so if for some reason we don't get a group who is familiar with these skills, I can always help them and teach them. I will create either a group Discord voice channel or a Facebook group where we can keep up to date with progress, and each week we'll have a group call or Zoom chat. From previous assignments I've done with remote learning, these have been extremely effective ways of communicating. Lastly, my story is creative and is organised, and any person who joins this group will see a distinct storyline, and each person can have their own creative input, for example, coming up with what to tweet, and using our imagination in this post-apocalyptic world. Well, that's my pitch. Thanks for listening.